certainly she is no stranger either to Western New York or to Chautauqua. She has been here many times. She has spoken here, she has occasioned here, and I'll let her tell you more about her own history, but it spans decades with us. It's really times like this when the spirit of New Yorkers come through. We are resilient, we're kind, and New Yorkers try to move from tragedy toward positive action. What happened here is unfortunately something that's becoming a little too familiar in the world. Reminds us that while we need to maintain vigilance on safety and security, Chautauquan organizations like ours simply can't step back from our mission of striving to make the world a better place. As I've said over the past few days, we need to find a way to transform hate into empathy, to reach out to each other in that place that we all share, a place of humanity that pushes against anything that separates us. Chautauqua is committed to providing a home for the voices of artists, preachers, and speakers who've had the ability to change the world for the better. That's why we resumed our programming last night, and that's why we'll complete the important conversations slated for the rest of our season and beyond. We continue to pray for the healing of Salman Rushdie and Henry Reese, and we've been grateful to hear the news that both are on the path to recovery, and we hold them in our deepest thoughts and prayers. And while we heal as a community, we also look to the future with deep gratitude to Governor Hochul, to the New York State Police for their promise of continuing and enhanced support, which I think is evident by her presence today. I just want to close by offering my personal profound thanks to the New York State Police, the Chautauqua County Sheriff's Office, our elected officials, especially County Executive P.J. Wendell, who was a real rock for us on the day of the incident, our own police and security officers, paramedics, volunteer firefighters, and other emergency response personnel, and our own staff, and so many of you as community members who collaborated to respond to this tragedy. I want to again thank Governor Hochul and her team for coming today, and while I wish it were under very different circumstances, her presence is healing, and so Governor, welcome home to Western New York.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael, for your leadership under extraordinarily trying circumstances. I also want to acknowledge the presence of our county executive. County Executive Wendell and I worked very closely together during the pandemic. It's been in a foxhole for 2 solid years, and I want to thank him and the sheriff of this county for their immediate response as well. I'm joined by the superintendent of the New York State Police, Kevin Bruin, who I've asked to join me to give a quick update as well, and Candy Maxwell, the board chair. And I just took a few minutes to meet some of the individuals who would not have called themselves heroes, but I sure did. The individuals who are part of the stage crew, those who witnessed the horror that some of you may have been in the audience to see just a few hours ago. And they sprung in action. They saved a man's life. And I could still see the trauma and pain in their faces that they're trying to figure out how something like this could happen in this place known for its healing, its tranquility, its harmony. But I'll tell you, the team that was on the ground here, and the EMTs, the firefighters, and those who show up and literally kept a man alive as they were transporting him, did an extraordinary job. But they're also human beings. I could see there's still a lot of adrenaline rush and a lot of fear, and the images keep going over and over their heads. So just keep all of them in your thoughts and prayers. If you see them as you're strolling through, just give them a hug. They need our love as well. Very proud to meet them. You know, for over 150 years, Chautauqua institution has really stood as a crown jewel in our state. I'm well familiar with it. It's founded on the principles of education and freedom of expression and inclusion, all values that we are proud of here in New York. And This is a place where people believe in the vigorous exploration of ideals and philosophies and study of religion and politics. And indeed, it was in 2017 when I stood on this very place as Lieutenant Governor celebrating the 100th anniversary of women securing the right to vote. I think the crowd was a little bit smaller. I was Lieutenant Governor back then. But I talked about how I had come here countless times as a child. And I was telling Michael, my family grew up blue collar up in Buffalo. My dad worked at the steel plant. We didn't have a lot of money. In fact, we really couldn't afford the normal admission gate. So they used to pile us in the station wagon after church on Sundays and bring us here just to breathe that rarefied air. That someday they'd be able to afford to bring their children here and to experience the wonder of Chautauqua, and they did. And my husband Bill and I raised our children up the road. We brought our children here. So this is not a foreign experience to me at all. This is home. This is home to me. So I know all of you who are here, either as long-term residents, occasional visitors, people here to enjoy the next upcoming week of programming. I know why you're here. You're in search. You're in search of something that is so unique to this place, that this is the place that someone decided to act on a threat to an individual who simply spoke truth and wrote. And so that is why it's a talk about a place that doesn't just value dialogue and freedom of speech, freedom of thought. This place exists because of those values. And I'm here to tell you it will exist for the next 150 years founded on those values as well. Because nothing will change what we have here. And I do believe that that is why the attacker chose, after many, many years, threat over Salman Rushdie's life, for having the courage, and I find it fascinating that we're entering the week of courage as your topic, that this person who stood for a symbol to all of us of courage, great courage, that his attacker found him in this place, a place of openness, a place where thoughts are shared regularly. So that's why he came here, attempted to do something. He failed. He failed, as we learn of the continued recovery of this individual who's been subjected to so much over his life. But I will tell you right now, as your governor, New York State will always stand up to protect freedom of expression, freedom of speech, and we condemn the cowardly attack on Salman Rushdie. And we condemn any individual or any group that dare violate the sanctity of a place like Chautauqua or to attempt an assassination on a world leader. That cannot happen in New York. We're standing up. And we will stand with courage. We will stand with courage. And I want to thank those, as I mentioned at the outset, those who stood with courage to save the life. And I want to thank our state police. I had a chance to meet the trooper who was the first one to take him into custody, an individual who's been on the force all of 8 years. And I shook his hand and I held it for a while and looked in his eyes and said, "Thank you for what you did. I'm sure the training didn't prepare you quite for this incident, but you were there. You didn't just respond as a professional, you responded as a human being who did everything in your power to save a life. So let that be part of your story. Let that be part of your story and go forth with courage." And I want everyone to know that as the investigation unfolds and there's much being found, you'll know the story. And those who are motivated to violence because of calls from foreign leaders, even domestic leaders, calls for violence cannot be tolerated. And so we're going to continue. And I want it out there that a man with a knife cannot silence a man with a pen. We will ensure the safety of all New Yorkers. We'll now never allow anyone to harm the ideals of this institution. And I'm also going to talk about some other threats that we're facing, because this is not the first time in the last 3 months that the spotlight of the world has been focused on Western New York. May 14th, 3 months ago, the attack, the racist attack by a white supremacist on neighbors in Buffalo, New York. The grocery store is literally 10 minutes from where my husband and I live. I know this community well. And they were targeted by an individual who is so radicalized on social media, and I'm going to guess that is where the attacker on Rushdie was radicalized and learned how to ferment the evil in their heads. And social media, all this is out there. That person was radicalized in our own state, traveled 3 hours, and why did he go to Buffalo, New York? Because he searched and found that that was the largest black population and the closest drive to him. That was 3 hours. He could have gone to Brooklyn, 3 hours and 15 minutes. He was in search of doing the massive, most amount of harm he possibly could. So in the immediate aftermath of that, we went back to Albany, and I said we're going to do something about this. Not only ban AR-15s from teenagers, being able to buy them, as was the case. That is now the law of the land. You have to have a background check. You have to be over 21. That changed. But also, I said we have to form a specialized unit in our state police to focus on domestic terrorism. We now have that stood up. We're focusing on it. And we also are focusing on social media platforms. I have called on our Attorney General, Tish James, a strong woman. You do not want to mess with Tish James. And she is out there working with her team to find ways that we can monitor so we can see what's happening before it happens, because I don't want to be in the business in New York State of solving crimes. I want to be in the business of preventing crimes. And when the message is laid out there and they're spelling out and no one connects the dots, sounds a lot like 9/11, doesn't it? They never connected the dots. Well, now those dots are coming together. We're monitoring, we're watching, we are vigilant. We have an entire team of individuals hired to watch for this information being out there and the radicalization that's happening to individuals, as well as improving our red flag laws. What does a red flag law do? It says when there's individuals out there, whether they're in a school, a workplace, in the community, and they give signs that they're going to do harm to themselves or others, we have a responsibility and a right to find out whether they have access to guns. That's how you stop crimes. And we have beefed that up. And that is the law of the land now in the state of New York as well. So we're focusing on best practices, sharing information, and again, the partnership with the county sheriff, our county district attorney, the state police. Don't always take that for granted, as well as the FBI. Because a long time, those silos, everybody does their own thing. They all want to get their own credit for something that happened. Now we have made them work together. I said, come on. I know how to make people work together. I've been a mom a long time too. I can bring you all together. And we've done that. There's cooperation, which is beautiful to see, and we're making a difference. So, here's what I want to say in conclusion. We talk about profiles and courage. We'll be examining that concept more this upcoming week. Mr. Rushdie spent more than a decade of his life in hiding, and finally he said, no more. I'm coming out. I'm coming out of the shadows. I will not be bowed by fear or a threat. And to those of us who go about our daily lives, if that's not an inspiration, I don't know what is. That inspires me to go out there and know I will use every tool at my disposal, including my voice, to call out this radicalization that's going on, to call out anyone who perpetrates violence, whether they're a high-profile individual or someone in the streets of Buffalo or Rochester or our small towns or the boroughs of New York. We have to call for an end to violence. And it's not just here in New York in our country. We just saw an attack on a bus in Israel, Middle East, where children, people from New York State were on a bus, were attacked, and are now struggling in a hospital. It is a challenging world. And to the young people I say, sometimes it can be scary. But this is the United States of America. This is the state of New York. We are a proud people. We're proud to have an institution that fosters these ideals, makes us proud of them, shares this knowledge, because this is common to our DNA, to speak up loudly. So wisdom will always prevail over ignorance. I'll also say that tolerance will always prevail over hate. Courage will always prevail over fear. And the pen will always prevail over the knife. Thank you. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for showing your appreciation for the Chautauqua ideal and onward to the next 150 years together. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'd like you to hear the latest from Superintendent Kevin Bruin, who's been monitoring this, getting details on the investigation. Again, it's still very early. I want people to know that. But there is much that's being revealed, and it'll be out there in the public very shortly. But in the meantime, just give an update on what we're working on. Superintendent.
Thank you, Governor. Good afternoon. Kevin Bruin, Superintendent of State Police. At the direction of the Governor, the State Police are going to substantially increase our presence here. We're going to do it in conjunction with the County Sheriff and in discussion with members of the Institute staff. Some of it you will see, some of the commitment you will see in terms of uniformed troopers with canines, and a lot of what will happen you won't see. There'll be investigators doing background work and threat assessments and other sorts of things that we do to try to get ahead of something. We have a great relationship with the sheriff, we have a great relationship with the district attorney's office, and we have a fantastic relationship with the FBI out of Buffalo, and we're going to continue to work not only prospectively to make sure that the security situation is in hand, but we're also working on continuing to investigate the incident that happened the other day. So I want to thank the sheriff and the members of the Institute staff for allowing us to come in here and help. Thank you all.
I'd also like to welcome County Executive P.J. Wildman.
Thank you, Governor. It is an honor to be here, and I will say we spent 2 years working closely together, so I know full well the Governor's ability and her prowess to accomplish tasks. Sitting here the other night, Michael asked if we would have something on our minds that we wanted to say, and I can't stress enough that ordinary Chautauquans became heroes that day. People leapt from their seats and stopped an assailant. They stopped what could have been world history, and they were part of that. So on behalf of the residents of Chautauqua County, I extend my thoughts and prayers to the family and friends of Salman Rushdie. This small, tranquil community here in Chautauqua County, a Chautauqua institution, has been shaken to the core by an act of one individual, his hatred and tendency for violence. This has reverberated across Chautauqua County, Western New York, and as I'm told, all over the world. It is disappointing that we live in a society where we cannot listen to the differences of others, especially in a place like the institution, where thinkers, problem solvers from around the world come to share their stories. I'd like to thank all of the emergency responders and law enforcement agencies who have done a tremendous job responding to this horrific event. And it is through their quick response that they were able to mitigate the situation, capture the assailant, and brought an end to the hatred and violence that took place on Friday. Thank you for being here, and again, thank you, Governor and Superintendent Bruin, for all you're doing to support the institution in its remaining weeks. Thank you.
Allow me to just close out by thanking the governor, thanking the county executive. It was remarkable on the day that the attack happened, how not only our community came together, but the folks behind me offered their support. I talked to the governor 2 or 3 times personally that day. County executive parked himself in our conference room for about 9 hours on state police and local sheriff have been tremendous. And so for Chautauquans, I hope that you leave this knowing that this team is working to continue the rest of our season. But please join me in thanking the tremendous people in our government and our law enforcement that have helped us to stay safe and to move on from this. And thank you all for being here this afternoon. Have a great day.